Hey guys, thank you for joining today. As always, I always like to start it out with a message. And right now I've been going through the book of Proverbs, and that whole book is just about wisdom and the sayings from arguably the smartest man who ever lived. So, that little backstory about Solomon was that he was asked by God, what do you want? Name anything. And instead of asking for riches or power or, anything like that, he asked for wisdom to rule his people. And because of that, God gave him the wisdom, and then he gave him the power and gold to go with all of it too. So it was like it was a double, double dose of both the wisdom, and then anything that he didn't ask for, he gave it to him as well. And so, the with the book of Proverbs, there's a beginning section that kind of gives you a gist about the book. And Solomon, he's actually writing a letter to his son, trying to just share some of the wisdom and life lessons that he's had so that his son can grow up and, not make some of the same mistakes. And there's the first like 7 verses have it broken down about like the benefits of wisdom and what it does for you in your life. And I use the easy to read version for those who may not get into the book very often. I wanted to make it as easy to understand as possible. And then I took the word Proverbs, or wherever it was referencing Proverbs, like they are, or these sayings, and I replaced it with wisdom because I thought it was very applicable here. And so I'll just read it through, and then I'll, talk more about it. But so these are the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, the king of Israel. Wisdom will help you learn to be wise and accept correction and to understand wise sayings. Wisdom will teach you to develop your mind in the right way. You will learn to do what is right and be honest and fair. Wisdom will make even those without education smart. Wisdom will teach young people what they need to know and how to use what they've learned. Even the wise could become wiser by listening to the Proverbs. Wisdom will gain understanding and learn to solve difficult problems, and wisdom will help you understand proverbs, stories, and hidden meanings and words of the wise and other difficult sayings. Knowledge begins with fear and respect of the Lord, but the stubborn fools who hate wisdom and refuse to learn. So I broke these down and kind of summarized each verse. Wisdom will make you wiser because you're receptive to it. You're wanting to learn from it. The Bible says that if you ask for it, all you have to do is just ask for it, and God will give it in abundance. And so, whenever you choose to be wise, if you want to be wise, you'll always be humble and looking for ways to grow in wisdom. Wisdom will change your perspective on everything. It will guide you to be honest and fair. The wise know when to take time to do something right and when to look for a better way. And those who are unwise look for shortcuts and take them without considering consequences. They try to take the easy road, regardless of the circumstances and who it may hurt. Wisdom helps both young and old, the uneducated and the educated. So it's applicable for all, and it's not just for people who have gone to college or gone to special schools or anything like that. It's for everyone. Wisdom is applicable for everyone, and everyone can benefit from it. Wisdom will drive you to seek out more and seek out answers to problems. It also gives you the confidence to know when problems arise, and that you can always find a solution. This one is really applicable to us in our industry because especially realtors, the residential side, there's constantly problems. Every transaction has its issues, and some have more than others. Some clients are Murphy's Law in action. And I know that it can be very difficult to navigate those, especially without wisdom and experience from what you've done before. But wisdom also teaches you to seek out the answers, to look for the ways to get around, to find a solution to the problem, to overcome it and get to the other side of it. The people who choose not to be wise are the ones who encounter a problem and then just throw their hands up and say, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the patience for this, or this isn't for me. They don't want to grow. Instead, they just say, I'm done. Wisdom will take you to a level of understanding equivalent to higher education and learning. Books and teachers that are gibberish to some will be nourishing to you. You'll actually seek out to grow in more wisdom the wiser you get. It's almost a drug. As you grow older and you learn that you can learn more, you want more and you seek it out. The beginning of wisdom is found in fear and respect of the Lord. Just ask and he will grant it. Now, some people don't understand the term fear in this perspective. And I wanted to make sure that I hit on this because there's different types of fear. So there's the fear of the unknown. There's fear of being hurt. There's fear of, being scared of something. I mean, you don't want to be scared of the Lord. You don't want to be afraid of him. That's not the fear that we're talking about. The fear that is referenced here is reverence. It's giving weight to, it's respectful reverence. Whenever you think about him, you understand and know his power and authority, and then you give reverence to that. So instead of being afraid of it, you just say, he is God and all powerful and all seeing and all knowing, and I will respect and love him for that. So if you keep that perspective of him and ask for wisdom, he will grant it to you and grow it in you. Fools are those who refuse to learn and they hate wisdom. And you guys probably encounter these on a regular basis. You have clients and other agents and even dealt with other brokers who are like this, where they know what they know and what they know is right and what you know is wrong. And they aren't interested in learning anything else or knowing a different way or understanding that real estate itself has changed over the years. People who were doing real estate in the 80s, I mean, there was a lot less compliance then than there is now. And so that type of thought process, like, I've been doing it for so long and the way I've been doing it is just fine and I don't need to change. That is someone who hates wisdom, who hates to grow. And you have to be very careful. As an agent, you need to recognize these type of people and give them plenty of room and make sure that you are protecting yourself with them, because the choices that they make, the bad choices that they make could end up costing you and your clients on the other side of the table. So just, give weight to that, use wisdom to your benefit, always seek it out, and you guys will be able to really grow into something. And I mean, I'm always looking for ways to grow myself, and I will never stop asking for more wisdom from God, because he just keeps granting it. And I feel like it's been a real blessing to me in this business, especially. So now let's flip over to. So we're going to cover advertising and TREC compliance. You guys may have seen some of the notifications that got sent out before. We had a a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a scare, but a letter was sent out to a few of the brokerages that are sponsored on the non-MLS side about naming one specific agent. And I've already talked to that agent about it, and he pulled down all of the advertising that he was even doing at that time. But the letter said that he was misrepresenting himself. He was violating TREC, and they cited the rule and the law that he was violating. And they threatened that if nothing was done, then they would
Ignore me. I got it.
file a complaint with the Texas Real Estate Commission and seek legal remedies. So this whole, ordeal came from this particular letter. And I may have mentioned it to some of y'all before, but there are these whistleblowers that they have in the past had looked up some of my entities, the owners, the agents, just to check on them and see what kind of advertising they're doing. And then they've contacted me and said, if they don't fix this by this date, then we're going to notify TREC and file a complaint. And so it is, it is a threat to the agents and to our brokerage, because they're seeking to damage, but at least they're notifying us, which is nice, because TREC would do the same. Don't feel like if TREC was to receive a complaint, they would come and contact you. They'd give you a little bit of time. You would want to get it addressed as soon as possible. But if you had another complaint about a different violation, and TREC was looking through everything and they saw that one of your advertising or something was out of compliance, you could also get dinged for that. And I've had an agent where she had a TREC complaint filed about some false advertising, and she was basically acquitted of that original charge. However, through the complaint process, the investigator looked up, Googled her, Googled all the advertising that she was doing, and found an old Zillow ad where she had listed herself as broker. And so she had to pay $1,000 fine. She had a permanent mark on her record now, and she had to do education. So that complaint came from something that she didn't actually even do anything wrong, but because her advertising wasn't in place, she still had a punishment that came from it. So in light of the recent letter that went out, I sent out a notification to everybody to check their advertising, make sure it's all compliant. And then I even thought about it more like, hey, maybe we should have more of a deep dive training specifically on what TREC is looking for, and where the resources that are out there that you guys can look at to find out, how can you get your advertising there. Okay, that's enough summary. So what we're going to be covering today, the type of advertising is emails, the business cards, website, social media, and then like print advertising, like realtor signs, signage, flyers, that kind of stuff. So these are the main sources of advertising. There may be other types of advertising. These are more as a general term, and you'll even see some of these things are duplicated because overall the advertising rules apply in different facets. But I wanted to talk about each one of them specifically with these types, because there's little nuance differences between the different types of advertising. So with emails, first of all, always be careful about what you're putting in writing. I talk about this in the fundamental trainings, but misrepresentation, false advertising, misleading messages can be easily proven if you change what you've already put in writing before. So like if you say, you're going to give a client a rebate, or take a certain percentage off of your commission, whatever it may be, and you put this in writing, you need to own up to that. Now, there's ways around it. You can say up to, or make the term more of a flexible amount. If you say we will give you $1,000, you have to give them $1,000. If you say we will give up to $1,000, then you can decide how much you're going to provide within that range based on the commission that you provide. And then I would also have in terms of service somewhere on your site or whatever email or wherever you're putting this, the explanation of how it's determined. That way you're ultra transparent. That's really what it's going to come down to. That's what's going to avoid complaints, is being transparent and meeting expectations that you set. But the key is, whatever you put in writing is what's easily provable, and that evidence can be used against you. So just make sure that you're always careful about anything that you type or write or send out there. The main thing with emails is the signature block on an email. First of all, I would encourage everyone to have an IBS link. That's the information about broker services. The TREC rule says that an IBS must be provided at first substantive with a client, and they said that an email can meet this requirement, where you're just providing basically a completed copy of the IBS. This completed copy would include the brokers, the firm name, the brokerage name, the supervisor, and your name. There's a list of them, actually. Let's go ahead and pull ours so you can see. But you guys, if you're with a different entity, it may be slightly different. So please keep that in mind. So for the MLS side, you have the brokerage, the firm name. Then you have the designated broker. If you're non-MLS, if you're just locators, this would be Joanna Dean and her information. And then a licensed supervisor would be the one that's the delegated supervisor. So if this agent has completed the broker responsibility course, the 6-hour broker responsibility, we could list them on this line right here. And then the sales agent with their information here. So if you guys have a personal website or you're sending out a personal email, it needs to be completed with your information all the way at the bottom. Just using this preformed one with just the broker's info on it does not meet the requirement. So just make sure that you have your information on there as well.
Ryan, so we would just print that off, and then at the bottom where it says agent, put in our information and then send it.
Yes. Now, the IBS link, you can take that form in PDF form. I know this may be challenging for some. Cheryl, I love you, but I
know you're talking about me.
But if you can edit the PDF on your computer and then save it in like a Google Drive or somewhere where it can have a URL link, then you could take that link and put it in your signature block, and then it meets that expectation that the IBS be delivered to everyone at first substantive. So
okay, I know what you're talking about. I just don't know how to do it, but I think Terry does.
Okay. And if y'all aren't able to, just let me know and I can certainly help. So okay. Now, what some people don't realize is there's actually, so the Trello rule says that the link has to be in the body of the email. It can't be like below your salutation down at the bottom. It can't be below, the name, phone number, all that stuff. It needs to be above all of that in the body of the email. Well, you can achieve this by just simply on the preformed signature block, just putting it as the first line. Then it will show up as in the body of the email, and then your signature is below it. So that will check that box and it will automatically apply it to every single email that you send out. So I would encourage each one of you to have that done first of all. Next is title. So several agents.
Sorry, Brian, quick question. Sorry. Hi.
Yeah.
I usually text my clients. I don't really use emails. So I sent property list using smart data apartment. And so I cannot add anything to those, right? I can't add any link to those.
Sure, you can. On the smart apartment data, it has a signature block that you can edit within the settings.
Okay, so I have to add the IABS to that as well.
I would encourage you to add the link in that signature block on at least your smart apartment data. If you're only texting back and forth, that's fine. If you know, you can technically send it from your cell phone. I mean, if you're going to be sending your list relatively soon after texting them, then that would meet that expectation. Let me just say this about apartment locating specifically. The chance of a complaint coming from apartment locating is fairly low. And that's because predominantly complaints arise around monetary loss, an omission, a mistake that an agent may have done or did out of malice. I don't know, but I'm just saying something's been done to where the client has lost money. With apartment locating, they have no skin in the game. They're just using, they're using your service, and y'all are providing a list, and all the money is exchanged with the apartment community. So there's really not much that's lost through that. So I will say this, I've had a number of complaints over the years, and not one of them was an apartment locating complaint. Now, I've had a couple of close calls, so don't think that it won't happen, but the IBS is one area where I would recommend having it in there so that if there was a complaint, you can show that the client did receive it. Because if there's a complaint, that will be checked and verified that they received an information about broker services.
Okay, thank you.
So the title for yourself in the signature block is what I'm referring to. You are not allowed to represent yourself as anything that implies that you're responsible for the brokerage to the consumer or public. This is mainly directed at those who own entities, the LLCs that I sponsor. You guys cannot put owner, founder, creator, CEO, president, COO, anything that would imply that you're the one responsible for the brokerage if you're a sales agent for the entity, because TREC will ding you. That agent that got that $1,000 fine because they listed themselves as broker, it would be the same for those if they were found in violation of this rule. So the alternatives that you can do there are, you may list supervisor if you're a delegated supervisor for the entity. You can list realtor, licensed real estate agent, apartment locator, those that are more along the sales agent line. You can use those, but you cannot list anything that would make the client feel like you're the buck stops with you, because it doesn't. TREC has said that the broker is the one who's ultimately responsible for the operations of the brokerage according to the licensure. So let me just say this. I know you guys, if y'all own this company, it's your company. I have no stake in it. I have no ownership. Y'all run it the way that you want to, and I just handle the broker related stuff. This is not a way to subvert you or anything like that. It's just to apply this specific rule because this is what TREC says. And if there's going to be this is one of the areas where we had a whistleblower reach out to us and say, you had, hang on one second.
Yeah, no.
You have an agent who lists themselves as founder on their website. And because of that, we're going to file a complaint with TREC. And I had to go through all the entities and notify everyone to make sure that their websites and their emails and everything doesn't say anything like that in order to avoid any type of complaint that would come from it. The broker's name must be included somewhere on the signature block. Now, this means, so it's not my name specifically, just to be clear. Sometimes if you're sponsored by an entity like Spirit Real Estate Group, Spirit Real Estate Group is the broker's name. If you're sponsored by the entity, that is the only name that has to be on there. And it's in its full form. So it needs to be Spirit Real Estate Group, LLC. That is the broker's legal name with the Texas Real Estate Commission. So that needs to be present on your advertisement in some capacity, and it needs to be at least half the size of the largest contact. Now, if it's all in the same signature block, those are all the same size. I don't expect you to do anything differently there, but just make sure that it is included. And I would recommend it be in the signature block, because you may not always add it to the body. Let me check out these chats. They're kind of building up. Isn't the client property and not the customer for the apartment locating? No, that's not the case. The customer is your client. Whenever you start providing them a list and you're talking to them about helping them find an apartment, you're providing brokerage services to them, and you're collecting a commission from the other side. That property management company is basically viewed as the other broker. And as a matter of fact, most of those apartment communities may have property management companies that oversee them, and a property management company, unless if they own all of their properties, they have to be licensed through TREC. So that's the other brokerage, is the property. Go ahead, Terry. You just have to unmute Cheryl's.
Okay, go ahead.
As far as in the signature block, I've had LLCs. You could put manager, right?
No.
Can't put manager, because the LLC, that's actually what you are.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So I talked to TREC enforcement about that specifically. There was one agent who wanted to be like team manager or something like that, and the enforcement said no, they are not allowed to use that. So they said they can use delegated supervisor, or supervisor is the only term that they've authorized agents to use in a like leadership capacity. If y'all have now, what I will say this is, there's probably 100 different variations of leader, team leader, all that stuff. So if you have a question, feel free to reach out to the TREC enforcement division and just ask them if this particular, title is okay to put down there if you're a sales agent, and they'll tell you. I don't know all of them. I can tell you that right now. So don't think that I know everything.
Okay. All right. Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So, business cards. Number one, broker's name needs to be included at least half the size of the largest contact info. So that is a specific rule. So if you have a large phone number or a large email address somewhere on there, for instance, like 24-point font, then, as long as it's at least 12, then you meet that requirement. If it's super small and in the corner and you're like thinking that's just going to be accepted, it won't. It needs to be at least half the size. So there was probably somewhere down the road that made it as small as they possibly could in the corner of the business card, and tried to get away with just not representing the broker. So they don't want that to happen. Including a valid email address, valid website, if you're going to put it on the card. So this is pretty much applied everywhere. If you're going to put a website on something, make sure that it is a valid website, because even if it's not, like if it's under construction, they still have the expectation that you're going to have an IBS, a consumer protection notice, and the broker's name, and all of that stuff's going to be on there. And if the site's under construction, then they'll ding you for it. So I've had a discussion with them regarding that as well. So you need to make sure that anything that you're putting out there is valid. I would encourage each one of y'all to use the fair housing logo or equal housing logo. There's different names for it specifically. And the reason why is because the government federally requires that if you're going to be helping people. Statewide, it's not required. Like TREC doesn't get involved with that. It's more of a federal requirement. So I would encourage you guys to have that on your business card or different print advertising. Just make sure it's there, or even realtor signs, that kind of stuff. Title, again, you're allowed to use realtor, licensed real estate agent, locator, relocation specialist, sales agent. These are all along the same level of expectation for the agent. So as long as it's not in some type of managerial capacity type title, other than supervisor, then you should be good to go. The website. So earlier this year, I reviewed all of my entities, and I will say this: I think there was only one entity where their website had everything just right. And that's just because TREC kind of moved the cheese a year or two ago, and I didn't go and verify everybody had everything updated, but that's why we're going to cover it today. So this can include blogs or any page that has a site name like a .com, .us, .whatever. All of these will apply if they are consumer facing. Now, if it's an internal website, you don't have to have that if it's like an agent portal and only your agents are seeing it. But if it's something that is consumer facing that the public can see, it needs to have the following rules. So one, broker's name on every page. It can't just be on the front page, especially if you guys are trying to start building your own brand, which I'll talk about that in a minute. I would encourage you to put it in the footer of the web page so that it's present on every page automatically, because current web building software, the footer, you build it one time and it just displays on every single page, unless if you tell it not to. So just make sure that you put it in the footer and that it's present on every page. Half the size of the largest contact info still. So if you're going to put the phone number in a larger font somewhere else on the page, just make sure it's not more than double the size that's in the footer. It can say powered by or brokered by, I've seen terms like that, and it's fine because it still has the broker's name in the language. So it checks that box. Branding, teams or groups, it's okay. There's no additional cost or anything like that. If you want to do a second name to start building a brand, I am fine with this. If you're with an entity, if you're sponsored by an entity that I sponsor, you need to check with the owners and see if that's something that they allow. For the agents who are sponsored by Spirit, it is allowed. You need to comply with the TREC rules as it goes with teams or groups. Number one, it cannot have brokerage, company, or associates in the name anywhere, because they say that is an implication that it is a standalone brokerage, and that's not what they want. What they do want is whatever the name is, that it includes team or group at the end of it. It can include your personal name. Even as a sales agent, you can have Brian's Realty Group. That's okay. They have approved those things. So as long as it ends with group or team, then you're okay to use that. Now, keep in mind that group or team names are not a replacement for the brokerage name. They're in addition to. So the broker's name still has to be on the website somewhere. And then at the top, you can have, the super duper group as the web page, as the title of the website. There's no size reference there. You can do as big or as little as you want. Now, also, domains are not team or group's names. If you have a specific domain that you've captured, if it is, fine. But like, for instance, secondchanceapartment.com was a website I generated. I still had to have the brokerage name on there, but the Second Chance Apartment was just the address of the website. It's not the group or team name that I was operating as. Now, if your group is operating under this group or team name, then it needs to be registered with the Texas Real Estate Commission. And the way that's done is you just send it to me, and then I go into the TREC naming tool, and it takes literally 2 seconds. I just type in the name for the group or team, hit add, and it says pending, but then a few seconds later, it shows up on the TREC website. So it's all automatic. There's no additional charges or anything like that. It's super easy, and it just needs to meet those qualifications in order to be added. Okay, next part of the website. IBS has to be fully completed. Now, if you have a more general website for your whole entity, this is to the LLCs that I sponsor, that's fine. Then you don't have to have the agent's name at the bottom of it. As long as it has the brokerage, the firm name, and the designated broker, then it'll suffice. But it does need to be completed. It cannot be just a blank form with no firm and no broker name on there. That will be a ding. The text, what I mean is the link text for that IBS must be at least 12-point font, and it has to say Texas Real Estate Commission information about broker services, or TREC information about broker services. Here's an example. I don't know if y'all could see this, but I have TREC Consumer Protection Notice and TREC information about broker services. You can't just have IABS by itself. They do not allow that. There's a specific rule about the link text itself. And so as long as it meets these qualifications, then you're good. Consumer Protection Notice, I just hit on that, needs to be updated. This was probably the one that most of the websites out there got caught on, because they have the older version, the 1-3 or the 1-2, but the latest version was updated just last year, and it's the 1-4 version. Here, I'll show y'all what it looks like. So this is the Consumer Notice 1-4-1_1.pdf. So this is the latest version, the CN 1-4. So this is what needs to be on there. If you're using an older version, that will not qualify. They do not accept that. So you need to make sure it's the updated version. And again, the link text matters. Texas Real Estate Commission has to be on there, and Consumer Protection Notice, TREC Consumer Protection Notice, and at least 12-point font. And I provide a link in this right here. If you just go to the trec.texas.gov website, or even just Google TREC Consumer Protection Notice, it'll provide you this link, and you'll see the updated version there. You do not want to just link directly to this. They want you to have your own version on your site. Again, on the website, a lot of entities have team pages, and the owner may have themselves listed as owner, CEO, founder, broker, whatever it may be. It's not okay. The best in those situations, if you don't want to just be listed with the others, is just leave it off. Just leave it blank. Don't put anything, because they will ding you for it. Okay, social media. How to comply with the TREC rules with social media really varies, because all the social media sites, there's hundreds out there. I would say there's probably only 4 or 5 that most people are using. But they all have different formats to them, different things, different capabilities on how you can apply the TREC rules, because overall, TREC does see social media as a website for you. And so they want to see that those expectations are still met. by including the IBS, including the updated consumer protection notice. Now, there's various ways to do this. You can put them as a link on your main page, put them in on your wall, or put them in the gallery, a picture of them in the completed format, of course. Just having them on the site somewhere should check the box as long as it's accessible to the user. Again, the broker's name has to be on the site. Now, if the social media site allows users to just look at a posting and not the main page, of which it can be through mobile, then every posting needs to include the broker's name, whether it's a logo that's embedded on the image or in the text itself. If you have a character limit, like with Twitter or something, you may want to just take the logo of the entity, as long as it has the brokerage name in it, and embed it on the photo that you're planning on using, and then it'll make it compliant. That way you save those characters. But it does need to be on every post on those, because if they're able to view a specific advertisement in which the broker's name is not present on the page anywhere, then they'll consider that a violation of the rule. So just make sure that it's prominent. Let's see. Don't list yourself as a responsible party for the brokerage. Again, don't, not representing yourself as the owner. Even I've had agents list themselves as brokers. That term, it means different things. I realize that. And actually, a number of states out there, the sales agents are called brokers, and then the broker would be called the managing broker. So there's a differentiation by just adding the managing or principal in front of the term. So it can be confusing, especially if you're from other areas where that name is used interchangeably. But here in the state of Texas, they do not allow the sales agent to use that name broker for themselves. If you're curious, if you want to know more about what the expectation is, TREC actually took this article that this lady wrote and posted it on their site, and it really breaks down the different main social media sites like Instagram. Here, let's see if I can bring it up, show it to you guys real quick. It first talks about the rule but it goes over Facebook, it goes over Instagram, Twitter, and how each rules apply to those sites. So it's not, I just showed you, it's not all that long. You guys can get through it within a few minutes. It's a very easy read. I would encourage you to do that. If you're doing any kind of social media advertising, just go to this site. If you Google TREC social media advertising, you will be able to see this link as well. Signs or signage and print media. So realtor signs, this is where it's going to be more applicable here, because you will find that a writer may have a 4-inch phone number on there. That means that the broker's name needs to be at least 2 inches tall somewhere on that sign. If you're, building out those, just make sure that size is correct. And you may think like, oh, of course it's going to be prominent, it's our brokerage name. But there are people that will build out a sign, and they're trying to branch out and do their own branding. So they may have their team name really big on the sign, and that's fine. There's no size limit on that. You can do as big as you want, but the broker's name, there is a specific size limit. So if you're going to put a phone number or an email address somewhere on your sign, just make sure that the broker's name is at least half that size. Most of the time, if you just keep them the same size, that's an easy way to just make sure
Thank you
you're
for
always
calling
compliant.
Avionics. This is Amy. How can I help you?
Okay. So let's see, at least half the size, include the fair housing logo. I talked about that. And then including only valid websites and contacts. So we've kind of talked about each one of those. in good form. Realtors, if you're going to add the realtor logo, make sure you use theirs, and it includes this little R. They are very specific about that. As a matter of fact, they go as far as they want you to use that. Every time you even say the word, they want it to be right there and anywhere else. But as long as, if you're going to have this on your sign, just make sure that that R is present in order to be compliant with the association. Okay. Summary: anything that is available to be seen by the public can be considered advertising and will fall under these advertising rules and laws that are set. Anything that you guys are wanting to put out there, I'm here, and I make it available to all agents. I make myself available to all agents. So if you have a post or a sign or a website that you're building or anything, just email me the link or image of it, and I'll review it. It takes me 2 seconds to check it for you, and I can check it for compliance, and I'll send back a reply saying, hey, it's good to go, or yeah, you're good, or whatever. Or maybe you're missing your IBS, or this font needs to be changed to this. I would check all of that stuff for you. Ultimately, it's my responsibility to make sure that you guys are doing this. Hence the reason why we're doing this training right now. But at the end of the day, if I tell you guys and I make myself available to you, if you do it and you don't use these resources, then TREC will hold you responsible, because I've done everything that I can to try to get you guys to follow these rules. So just make sure you use me. I'm here available to you guys. Posts, you don't have to send me every single post that you're going to post. Some of you guys are posting 3-4 times a day. I don't need to see all of that. If you have a general template of what you're using, that's fine with me. Just send me the template. I'll check it off for you, and you're good to go. If you're wanting to use a different template, send that to me. I can review it for you. And each one of you, especially if you've been in the industry long enough to where you've put some advertising out there in different modes, you should Google yourself. Google your name and realtor, Google your name and real estate, Google your name and apartment locator. See what you can find out there. Look at your LinkedIn profile, look at all your social media, review everything from an objective point of view to see if it meets these qualifications, so that you can make sure that your advertising is compliant. And the reason why is because this is exactly what TREC will do if there's a complaint about you. I'm not saying everyone's going to get a complaint, but I deal with probably 1 to 2 complaints a year on an agent. So I see the frequency, and it's enough to be concerning about it, because once the complaint's there, the investigators already looked at everything before they let me know what's going on. So, we may not always know that the complaint is coming and when it's coming. And as a matter of fact, we just had one that a lady filed a complaint from 4 years ago. She was denied for a residential lease, and she complained that she was discriminated against. But it was 4 years ago. And whenever I was talking to the investigator, I was just like, this thing was 4 years ago. There's not even any evidence with the complaint. And they were like, well, due to the nature of this complaint, we have to see it through. We still have to talk to all the parties. We still have to do the broker questionnaire. We still have to do everything that we can to investigate it, so that we can say that we've done our part and that we talk to everybody. So everything will be given weight up to 4 years. That's that mandate that I mentioned with record keeping. They mandate that we keep a record of everything for 4 years. And that's because someone can file a complaint up to 4 years later. And then after that, then it's no longer valid. But anyways, they looked through all of her advertising. I went and I checked, and everything looked pretty sharp and good. So it should be fine. But you definitely don't want to already have them look at you without knowing. I often equate this to being pulled over by the police. You may have gotten pulled over for doing 10 over, but whenever that police officer is walking up to your car, he's checking everything else. If the tread's low, if you're flat, if your tire's flat, if your window's out, if there's a bunch of paraphernalia sitting in your back seat, I don't know, whatever it may be, they're looking. They look over everything, and they may not give you a ticket about your speeding ticket, but they may pull you out of the car if they think you're drunk, and that's the gist of it, is that TREC is very much like the police. And if they get called into it, everything has to be just right, because they may be out for blood. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. All right, I'm going to go through the chat real quick. There was a number of responses. Should it be Spirit Real Estate Group or your actual name, Brian Bierke? So, in my case, for those agents that are under Spirit Real Estate Group, just under Spirit Real Estate Group LLC, the non-MLS side, you need to have Spirit Real Estate Group LLC on all your advertising. For the realtors, the MLS side, those who are underneath me specifically, you can do either Spirit Real Estate Group or Brian Bierke, because I have a DBA set up so that those are interchangeable. You can use one or both, or whatever mix between the two. It's up to you. Let's see. Can you post the link in the chat? Yes, for the social media. Let's go back. There you go. There's the link. Oh, then you said never mind. Sorry about that. All right. Well, anyways, if y'all want that social media link, it's in the chat. That's it. Does anybody else have any questions? This is where the crickets come out. Can you share PowerPoint? Absolutely. I recorded this as well, so this will be saved in video format. It'll be sent out to everyone through the CRM, through the notification that you would have received before. And I'm also planning on shortening this and making this into a specific training that will be available in the Agent Portal classroom as well. Any other questions? All Gucci. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And I want to thank each one of y'all for attending.